April 1897. Mysterious airships were reportedly seen over Iowa, Wisconsin, Illinois, Kansas, and Texas. The reports claim that it averaged about 300 feet long and say that it had enormous wings and sails. It looked as though it traveled 60 to 80 miles an hour. Some people described it as a cloudless tornado, with some residents running for shelter in their storm houses. One witness says he didn't see a ship, only a small red light, which he first mistook as a meteor. An unnamed investigator concluded that the airships were, quote, aerial war cars from Mars, and that the Martians had come to see how many reinforcements the United States would need if the armies of Europe invaded. On April 17, 1897, in the town of Aurora, Texas, it was reported that an airship crashed into a windmill belonging to a local judge, Judge Proctor. On April 19, 1897, the Dallas Morning News reported that, quote, the pilot of the ship is supposed to have been the only one aboard, and while his remains were badly disfigured, enough of the original has been picked up to show that he was not an inhabitant of this world. The newspaper also talks about papers found on the supposed dead ET, and says these papers contained an unknown hieroglyphic writing. It goes on to say that the ship was too badly damaged to understand its construction and mode of propulsion and power. Some say the metal it was created with looked like a mixture of aluminum and silver. People came from all over to view the wreckage and collect pieces of the strange metal the object was constructed with. The newspaper claims that it seemed like the craft wasn't working properly, as it was traveling at an estimated speed of 10 to 12 miles an hour, slowly descending towards the earth. It descended over the town square and crashed into the north part of town, destroying Judge Proctor's windmill. There was an enormous explosion, which scattered debris over several acres and destroyed the judge's flower garden. After the crash, the townspeople allegedly buried the alien with Christian rites in the Aurora cemetery. A resident of Aurora, Tony Wheeler, whose family has lived there for generations, first heard of the crash from a neighbor. She came up with a name for the ET, Ned. The original gravestone, depicting what looks to be a cigar-shaped object, was stolen around 1973 and was replaced with a 3-inch pipe in the ground. Another marker was seemingly constructed after this, with this marker disappearing in 2012, this time being replaced with a boulder to mark the grave. People still come to the grave to bring gifts and write on the boulder. Researchers have tried to find evidence for the crash, including using radar to try and tell if there really is an alien body in the grave, digging up metal at the crash site, and testing water in the well where the wreckage was supposedly stored. In the 1970s, people tried to dig up the grave. Wheeler states that the Cemetery Association kept people from digging up the grave because by law you can't exhume remains unless you notify next of kin, which Ned doesn't have, at least none that we know of. Earlier in the year, a slew of disastrous events plagued the small town of Aurora, including a boll weevil infestation that destroyed the town's cotton crop, a fire that killed several people and burned down multiple buildings, a railroad that was supposed to run through the town but was canceled, and a spotted fever outbreak that forced the town into quarantine. The former mayor of Aurora, Barbara Brammer, researched these events and found that the man who wrote the article detailing the alleged crash in the Dallas Morning News, S.E. Hayden, was apparently a known jokester, and concluded that Hayden was trying to keep the town alive with an exciting story about visitors from another world. This complements the fact that Hayden never followed up with the story and didn't even cover the burial of the supposed extraterrestrial pilot. Time magazine interviewed a resident of Aurora in 1979 who said that Hayden had fabricated the entire story and that Judge Proctor never had a windmill on his property. a UFO Hunters episode investigated the case and found that there were 4 windmill stops on the judge's property that could have held up a windmill.
Why would they put these things here for a well?
Those are for windmill stand.
This would be connected to a windmill?
Yes.
Or it may have been at one time?
The tower. The windmill over the top of the well.
This case is unique in that it would have been the first reported UFO crash, taking place before Roswell and even before the Wright brothers' first flight. There's evidence that suggests that something could have crashed in Aurora, but skeptic claims are just as compelling. Hayden lost his wife and 2 sons to spotted fever, while another son was left blind. It could have been desperation that motivated him to come up with a gripping story to save his town from decimation. The sightings of strange craft before the incident gives some credence to the UFO explanation, but the fact that much of the debris found at the site was hauled off, never to be seen again, creates a blank spot in this theory. Whether it be an actual alien or just a ruse created to keep the town from going under, it's a fascinating tale that should live on. Who knows, maybe there really is a small alien body buried in Aurora. Thanks for watching.